think we are live. All right.
Okay.
Cool. Well, thanks, John, for coming on the podcast today. I haven't done a live one like this in a while.
Oh, good. Well,
So
thanks for
appreciate
having
you
me,
being on.
Drew. I've been looking forward to this. By the way, I think it's this what you're doing is a great contribution to the industry. You know, it's we took that step into this information age, this technical age, and I think this is a great thing to do. I hope it only grows and grows for you. And whatever we can do to help you, we will.
Yeah, no, and I know you talked to me at the NAFED conferences last year, and then you had your, you put us in one of your newsletters out there. So I'd love to kind of stay on top of that and have some fun stuff coming out in 2022.
Yep, for sure, absolutely.
Well, John Demeter on the podcast. I'll do an intro before this, but essentially wanted to talk today about just the specifically more on the clean agent market, since you've been heavily involved with Wesco and just the different halon companies that you've had over the years. Just and what's happening with that politically. It's probably past political now. It's actually becoming real.
Yeah.
um, I've been in the industry, at least working with Tyco. I started with Tyco on the fire product side in 2008, I think, and it was talked about then with the Novec 1230 transition. So it's interesting that it's 13, 14 years later that
Well,
something's finally happening.
just to pick up on what you just said, you know, Wesco, we're in the clean agent suppression business. We buy, we recycle, and we resell the whole range of clean fire protection agents. You know, HFCs and halons, uh, Novec 1230. But I remember we've been a member of the board of both HARC and HRC, the Halon Recycling Corporation, for probably going on 25 years. And on the committee, on the board, as long as I can remember, was 3M. And when I got there, I think I joined the board a couple of years after the organization started, and 3M was selling CEA 410. That was their clean agent, CEA 410. And I think shortly after we got involved with HARC, they pulled it from the market. It was not something that was sustainable, and they kept on showing up at the HARC meetings. I'm going, I wonder what they're doing here. I mean, they don't have an agent. What are they doing here? And this went on for 5 years. Good guys. They were, they contributed. They
Sure.
participated in the industry. I go, I wonder what they're doing here. And then we found out
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Novik,
Yeah.
and now it looks like Novik is in the catbird seats.
Yeah. That's crazy. It's kind of, what year was that when you were in those meetings and
Oh well,
3M was going?
well, I we joined HARC and HRC probably 97, 98,
Okay.
1997, 1998, and CEA 410 I think was kind of on its way out. And they also had issues with foam that came up too. They talked about their issues in foam, and we know mostly
Yeah.
about that right now.
Oh
But
yeah.
CEA 410 went away. I think that Pemol was probably the only or one of the few um, manufacturers that signed on to distribute CEA 410, and then it went away. Um, and then in that period, call it 2001, right up. I'm trying to think of when Novak sort of broke. I remember when they talked about making maybe it was 2007 or eight. They would know, of course. Um, but it was that span of 5 or 6 years. So I really wondered, what 3M was doing. But no, they've positioned themselves really well
Yeah. I remember it being on the Today Show at one point. That was
with
before.
yeah
Yeah.
with what's his name. Yeah, I can't think of his name. I know who was on there. Yeah.
I forgot
Um,
who it was, but I know we didn't get into it, but John, you've been in the industry for I guess
long
give
time.
it a little background on yourself,
Yeah.
and then we'll kind of give some context to this. We jumped right into it, which people are probably loving to hear, but just
Good.
give a little background on yourself, and
Yeah,
we'll
it's
we'll
sort
kind
of
of go from there.
born and raised into fire protection. I spent after a couple of years outside the industry after college, working in Washington for a large trade association, I came back into a family business, and we were in the portable fire extinguisher business. And I ran that from the early 80s to the early 90s. Ended up selling that business to Kitty
Yep.
back then, and invested in a company called Wall Parts and Supply. Don Wall, you may have known Don Wall. Don Wall was my partner for a while.
Okay.
Don and I were in the wholesale parts business for a while, and I ended up buying out his position. And it was funny to this day. I still remember being in the parts business and not figuring out, not knowing really how you make any money in the parts business. It was a difficult business to be in. But while we were there, while we were in this wholesale, it was sort of a Brooks wannabe,
Sure. Yep.
at the time. Um, in the mid 90s, we started getting phone calls from distributors. It would go like, hey, we've got 500 pounds of 1301. Do you know anybody who needs any? We say, well, we'll try to find out. And the next day we get a call from somebody, hey, we need 500 pounds of 1301. You know anybody who's gotten any?
Right.
And so we started, connecting A with B and realized that we're making more money in this Halon business than we were in the parts business. So we sort of morphed into this recycling business, which we've been in with both feet now since 1995. Um,
Wow.
we're a fairly active importer of Halon's 1301. We've worked in 26 different countries, importing and exporting, and we enjoy it here. We've got a decent distribution, both bulk halons and service work. Besides our work with bulk, selling aviation um,
Sure.
and petrochemical, we do a fair amount of service work of all the agents, FM 200 and 125 and
Yep.
Novec 1230. So that's where we are. We've been together as a group for a long time. Average employee is about 10 years with us, so we enjoy it here. We're having fun.
That that's great. Yeah, I know. And you're heavily involved in, the trade associations, like you said before. I know you're
Yeah.
past president of FSSA,
Yeah,
I
past
believe.
president of FSSA, active, not so much this last year or so, but until then, very active on the board. Good organization. It's a powerhouse of information. It's a great place to assemble. Like nothing but good things to say about FSSA, as well as NAFED. NAFED been around longer. It's a much bigger organization and a real
Yep.
quality organization run by quality people, both of them.
Yeah, and they had I think the FSSA, I was at the last live one. They did a virtual one last year. So they've
Yeah.
actually done a very good job through COVID and with everything happening. They've had a lot of town halls
Yep.
about AIM, about
Yep.
the foam, firefighting foam,
Yep.
which I'd love to I'll have a podcast coming up here soon on
Yep.
that.
Yeah, well,
Um,
Catherine Adrian, as you know, is running it this year. I think her
yep,
her office is up next, and she's done a great job. She's expanded it. They've done some great business going overseas and expanding contacts. So it's a rock solid organization. And Todd
yeah,
Stevens, of course, Todd Stevens was president before Catherine. And my joke was, Todd, when I was president, there was no COVID. You became president, we've got COVID. So I don't know if there's any relationship there, but you better think about that.
he did do that Purple Live virtual event, which was actually, it was tough, but you know what? Hey, you gotta, if you're dealt a hand, you gotta roll with it, right?
It worked out much better than I thought it would.
Yeah, yeah.
Much better. The only thing that was missing was the bar. At the end of the day. But
I
that's.
know, I know.
But
Yeah,
no, you're right. You adapt. You adapt to circumstances.
yeah, and this year will be fun. It'll be fun to. I'll be heading down there. Hopefully, we'll see you down there as
Yeah, oh,
well. And
yeah, yeah. It's big. One.
um,
It's the 40th. It's the 40th anniversary.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I do. I remember that. So
yeah.
I'll try to. I think I'm going to try to do something on the podcast down there while we're there too.
Good
Might as
idea.
well. I
And
did it
Todd,
with
and
Navid last year.
they'd be happy. I'm sure they do some publicity for you, letting people know that you're going to be down there. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, it's good. So, yeah, it's great background. I guess, we have a wide listenership to the podcast. They might not be know about AIM, or they might not even know about fire suppression as far as Halon,
Mm.
FM 200, and now Novec 1230, and then beyond that. So, what is what is the need for fire clean agent and fire
Mhm,
suppression? What are the main channels, and
mhm,
who's doing that work?
mhm.
Just give a basic intro.
Well, the category is commonly referred to as clean agents, clean fire suppression chemicals. And they're called clean because they put the fire out and they leave no residue, unlike water or dry powder or foam, which contaminate and can ruin equipment. Clean agent chemicals are gaseous. They put the fire out and leave no residue. Um, Up until the mid 90s, it was Halon 1301. Halon 1211, of course, is a streaming agent. Halon 1301 is a total flooding agent. And it was really the only game in town, Halon 1301. And then, of course, in the late 80s, they started to realize the damage that was being done to the ozone layer because of ozone depleting chemicals like Halon 1301 and refrigerants R11 and R12. And the world moved pretty quickly, from the time they discovered that this could be causing a serious environmental issue to the time that a treaty was signed in 1994, which essentially banned the production of almost all of the ozone depleting substances.
Yep.
They move very, very quickly. So there was a lot of 1301 pumped into the marketplace: aviation, military, commercial, petrochemical, mainly the North Slope, um, over the years. And when the ban was put into effect, of course, I'm sure you're aware of this, and your listeners probably are too. There were a number of industries, aviation being one of them, that had not found a substitute for Halon 1301. FM
Wow.
200 was moving nicely into data centers and telecommunication sites, but aviation and petrochemical and marine for a while had no alternative to Halon 1301, and the agreement was that you could continue to use halons as long as they were gotten from the recycled market, which is
Gotcha.
basically what we do. We look for
Right.
halons that are no longer needed, redundant. We buy them, we bring them back here to our factory, we recycle them, and we sell them back into distribution. And again, that distribution is mainly commercial aviation and North Slope of Alaska petrochemical. Um, in the 20 years from the time it was banned, HFCs, specifically FM 200 and FE 125, HFC 125, trade name is FE 25, came into the marketplace and started doing a really good job at replacing clean agents where they were needed. Again, data centers were still in a growth spur there, and I guess between the early aughts and 2012, 2015, maybe 2010, 2012, made a huge dent in the market. They were the only one there. Um,
Right.
and then Novec, then 3M,
Right.
introduced Novec, which is a clean agent, a different kind of a clean agent. It's not. It's in a liquid form. It's stored in a liquid and it disperses as a gaseous agent. Um, Began looking for market share, and they gathered it. It's a good agent. They're both good agents. Um, there became another environmental issue because while HFCs, FM 200 and FE 25, um, were not ozone depleters, they were pretty intense global warmers.
Oh. Yep.
And you started to hear coming from 3M, we'd be doing the same thing, mentioning, hey, you got an environmental issue here. And at that time, '08, '09, there was it started before that. Climate change has been with us for a long time. And,
Sure.
and, and you started hearing about HFCs in relation to climate change. And it became wrapped up in that movement, both scientific and political, that says you've got to do whatever you can to get rid of global warming gases. And HFC, HFCs had a target on their back when it came to that. Um, they tried to pass a cap and trade legislation back in '09 and in 10. That failed. Um, but the issue remains, the idea of eliminating or phasing out or phasing down HFCs have been with us for a very long time. The my point here is that what happened with the AIM Act, and let me jump into this AIM Act
Sure.
right now. In January of 2020,
Yep.
Congress passed and President Trump signed the AIM Act. It's the American Innovation and Manufacturing Act, and essentially what it what it locked into law was a plan over a 15-year period from 2021 to 2036 to phase down the production and importation of all HFCs.
Wow.
Not a phase out, but a phase down. And so we've been in the industry, we've been hearing about this issue, virtually all the time about um, there are environmental issues with HFCs, with FM200. Novec, of course, has no environmental issues or none that we know of right now.
None
There
that
was
we
about
know of right now. I always feel, and
it,
I'll put my little spin on this. It's like I feel like, as more research is done and, different studies come out, there's always something better, right? You could always get cleaner and greener and, what's the next thing, right?
there's always sand and water. It's just, it's but there was a battle, fairly public, between the Novec producers and the FM200 producers, and the argument coming from uh, DuPont, who was the manufacturer at the time, was yes, there's probably, or there likely will be, a phase down, and not a phase out, but a phase down of HFCs. But don't worry, fire protection community. You guys represent a relatively small portion of HFCs, and refrigerations represents a very large portion of
Sure.
the HFC business. There will always be enough for you. You will always have enough FM200 and always have enough FE25. Don't worry. Um, as it turned out, when the ink was dry on the AIM Act, and it was announced to the industry, um, what the EPA did was not to assign an allocation. Before I get into allocations, let me get into the broader aspect of the AIM Act. It was passed in 2019. It was signed in 2020. It's law, and the EPA took the first 9 or 10 months of 2021 and put the regulations around that law. That law and the regulations that's around it right now pegged a baseline of production of HFCs. And they said from this baseline, we're going to reduce it by 85% over the next 15 years. And
Wow.
the steps are a little bit awkward. It's not a straight line step. It's a short
Sure.
one and then a big one down to 40%. And we're going to reduce that by 85% over the next 15 years. And we are going to allocate to anybody that's been in this business a certain amount of uh, allocations to either produce or to import. And those allocations will go down as time progresses. So if you were paying attention, you knew all this was happening.
Right.
You knew that something was going to happen with HFCs, and there was an event was going to come. Well, when it was finally announced, what the EPA did, I think the law does this. I don't think it was the EPA reg. The EPA did not say, okay, going forward, you can make so many pounds of 227, and you can make so many pounds of 125, and
Right.
you can make so many pounds of 134A, and so many pounds of this, and so many pounds of that. They didn't break it down by type of gas. What they did was they asked each one of the applicants for allocations to give their mix of products that they produced over a period of time. Then they took that mix and they calculated the global warming content of that mix.
Right.
And they said, okay, your allocation is this percentage of global warming content. This is what you can produce. You can make whatever you want to make. You can make FM 200, you can make FE 125, you can
Right.
make 236, or you can make 134A. You can make anything you want, but your allocation is based on global warming content. And
Gotcha.
that went out to all of the major manufacturers of the gases and people that we might not recognize, people that are in the refrigerant industry. They all got a piece of these allocations. And when you began to focus on that, you realize that DuPont, or now Chemours, they've got a certain allocation, and they have to make best use of that allocation. And what's the way to make best use of it? And that's to make the gases that probably make you the most money. I don't know
Right.
this, but this will be going on in my head.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, 227 and 125 and 236, these are the fire suppression gases that we're actively involved in. They
Right.
are some of the highest global warmers.
Oh, wow.
They have the highest global warming content of many of the gases. So every pound of 227 or 125 or 236 that they make, they're eating into that allocation, which means they can't make a pound of something that they might be making more money on.
Like,
Um,
if they're selling to the marine industry, the aerospace industry, military industry, like, they're not, they're making way more margin there than they are the fire suppression industry.
again, I don't know where their margins are, but I know that the refrigerant market is really big and the fire
Yeah,
suppression market is relatively small
sure.
compared to the refrigerant market, and that's where their I think their biggest customers are in that refrigerant market. So in addition to it being a larger market and the fire suppression gases, 236, 125, 227, being more intense global warmers, thus costing them more of an allocation, the feeling was they're going to be leaning towards the refrigerant market and not paying too much attention, not in servicing necessarily the
Sure.
fire suppression market. Um, and so when and as the law started becoming understood, it was clear to me anyway that if you're a manufacturer, if you're an equipment manufacturer, if you're a Tyco or a Kidde or a Fike or a Janus, you didn't really know what your costs were going to be. You
Right.
didn't know what availability was going to be. Two big things. Um, and so I started asking myself, how do you plan then? How do you, if you're a manufacturer of FM 200 systems, how do you plan for 2022 and 2023 if you don't know what your costs are going to be, and you don't know if they're going to be able to deliver, on time? Because again, I'm not privy to conversations, let's say between Chemours and Ansel or Fike, and I don't know what went on there. But based on the announcements that these companies have made, just this morning, Janus announced that they are out of the FM 200 business as of February 1st, 2022. They orders that are in house now, they'll
Wow.
fill. Orders that might come in house in January, but they're essentially out of the the FM the HFC business, the FM 200. They didn't do FE
Interesting.
25. The Kitty announcement and the Fike announcement. I think they're the only three companies that went whose announcements that I've seen. They were a little bit more cautious. Well, we don't really know, and
Sure.
we there's going to be a problem. The price is really going to go up. We don't know how high, and availability might be an issue. So we suggest you start selling water mist and inerts.
Novak.
And
Yeah.
again, I'm not quoting what they're, but that was the tone of their message to the distributors. So and on top of that, um, again, 3M's a good company. They got a good product. I mean, everybody likes Novak 1230. Um, but on top of that, a lot of the companies that a lot of the buyers, the end users, you know, the big telecoms, you know, they're all heavily involved in sustainability.
Sure.
I'd venture to say that most of them have a sustainability vice president or someone
Right.
whose job it is to keep tabs of how we're building our factories and what we're putting in them. And I think with HFCs and an alternative that's not a global warmer, I think if it comes across the desk of a sustainability vice president and you've got the option between a Novec 1230 agent and an HFC, it's gonna be hard pressed to go with the HFC. I
Oh
think
yeah,
it's gonna carry a stigma.
I feel it was that way when I was doing more clean agent, consulting when I was with Viking and Tyco, um, or helping out Minimax a little at Viking. It was already kind of going that way anyway.
Yeah,
Like, why are you going to make the decision? There was a little price difference, but it was there wasn't much there. And then you put this in front of it, where all right, you install a system with FM200. If the system goes off, 10 years later, are you going to be able to find the agent? And if you do,
yeah.
I mean, obviously, might be an opportunity for Westco, right, to
Well,
refill
that's
that.
a
But
whole separate issue.
yeah,
But you're right. No, it's we the the last Halon 1301 system was manufactured probably in 1992, and we're still servicing them.
yeah,
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 and so it probably maybe at least as much FM 200 out there as there was 1301 out there. So
sure.
it's I wouldn't call it job security, but yeah, we think we're going to be servicing clean agent systems for a long time. But the again, I don't want to be putting too much weight on the sustainability officers, but it's it's not just will you be able to recharge it in 10 years. It's if that system goes off, it's reportable, and somebody there is going to be responsible for reporting the carbon footprint of that company that
Right,
year. And they
right.
don't want it in that.
No,
They just don't want that in their carbon footprint. So
no.
why why hassle?
Hey, at least there's an alternative, right? There's
Yeah,
there's there's inerts out there. There's obviously FM200. You can
right.
get into the water mist, or you can get in some crazy, detection with pre-action systems.
Yep.
I'm I'm worried about the firefighting foam market, where not only just firefighters, just in general with with their agents on the trucks, but just the fixed foam systems. Like, what there's really no alternative right now. And I mean, there are without the PFOS and PFO in there, but there's not a great alternative. So I mean, I think the industry's been very good over the years. We've come up with solutions. I think we'll get through it, but
Yeah.
um, you know, I think
Yeah.
everything
Good.
with HFCs is everybody's known it's coming for a while, so it's
Yeah.
not like it's new.
It's not a surprise.
Yeah,
The surprise was, well, we thought there would always be enough for us, but the way the law was written and the regulations were put together, there might not be enough. And again, I don't even know. Again, I'm not privy to these conversations, but I mean, Comores must have their production plan that's set in place right now. They must know
yeah,
what they're going to do. But when you see announcements from Janus and Fike, it wasn't clear. Don't worry, guys, we got you covered for the next 3 years. Because Fike wouldn't be making, I mean, Janus wouldn't be making this announcement if they knew they were covered for the next 3 years. But so I don't know. I've heard the word hospice used in relation to the HFCs and fire protection. It's
oh wow,
we're in hospice. It's slowly going away, and it'll be replaced by other stuff. And it's going back to FSSA for a quick second here. 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, and I think um, uh, several people on the board were bringing this thing up, but we were always always thought of ourselves as the clean agent, trade association, but we're special hazards, and it was not a fight, but it was a discussion over the course of a couple of years to say, we're more than just clean agents.
right,
We're special hazards. We're wartamists, and we're inerts, and we're not just
yep,
before that it was the FSA was fondly or not so fondly known as the Halon Country Club. You know, a bunch of rich guys that own these big businesses and going off to nice places every year to having a conference. But it's not. It's probably one of the world's leading technical
Correct.
associations when it comes to special hazard fire protection. But anyway, so special hazard, is broadened now. Detection plays a big role in that. There have even been FSSA presidents and executives who've said, I'm an executive in this association, and clean agents make up 5% of my business. It's
Right.
it's
I know.
not that big of a
I
thing.
mean, you look at all the member, and Inspect Point became a member a couple years ago now. And I went, because they're heavily involved in service and inspection and all that, but they're not. They're kind of full range companies at FSSA. It's yeah, special hazards is a focus, but they do. You're right. Majority of their business is coming from the everyday fire alarm, the
Yep,
everyday
yep,
extinguisher, the everyday sprinkler. So,
yep.
but there's a lot of some great thought leaders there, and yeah, it's been fun to be members, and
Yeah.
they
If
do
I
have a
can go,
nice annual trip though. It is quite
yeah,
nice.
yeah. It's a, no, they, and by the way, the planning for these conferences begin about 4 weeks after the last one ends. So
Wow.
they put it, Steve Rice, who you probably know from Prestigious,
Yep.
is the chair of the planning committee and does an enormous amount of work. From they probably put 11 months, 10 or 11 months into planning the conference. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
but
that's
if
great.
I can just go back to the AIM Act for a second, um, the EPA, um, I think went out of their way to make sure that nothing in this legislation screwed anybody up really bad, uh, and 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 stuck somebody who really needed an HFC without any fire protection. So what they did was, in addition to these allocations, actually before the allocations were given out, they identified uh, certain users, critical users of HFCs, and they gave them their own allocations. Like the military's got its own allocation.
Wow.
The commercial aviation has got its own allocation. Um, I think I never knew this, but there's a cottage industry making bear spray. Did you know that? Bear spray. And it's
I've had bear spray. Brett Stratton, right?
oh yeah, yeah,
You know
yeah, yeah.
Brett. So one of his guys, Carl, I think I went camping one time when I know those guys. he he let me borrow his bear spray, but I didn't look at the ingredients to see what was in it.
It's an HFC, and it somehow must have had a good lobbyist, and they got to the EPA and say you've got to pay attention to this. So bear spray has its own allocation. So you know the other question of one of the things that were talked about are being talked about is price. What's going to happen to price? And the you know the initial reaction was, well, it's got to go up. If you're constricting supply, it's got to go up, and it probably will. Um, in 2022, the the production drops 10% from the baseline, and it's not really a big hit. The big hit comes in 2024 when it drops 40% of the baseline. But it, I think that in the first year that there's going to be enough quantity, enough volume of
Sure.
availability of 227 and 125 that you're not going to see that
No.
dramatic increase. I could be wrong about that, but I think there's a fair amount of 227 in the country right now that got in or that will get in before the deadline. If you can bring in 227 until December 31st this year, after that you've got to have an allocation. So I know that gas is coming in. It's going to be stocked with the manufacturers. They'll have it there as a buffer.
Sure.
So I don't see necessarily that if it does spike, I don't think it's going to be because of demand. It might be because people think they can raise the price and still get it. Or maybe they want to raise the price and make it go away. How do
Yeah.
you make people buy item B is by pricing item A,
Right.
higher than people want to pay. So I don't
Well,
know. Though.
like there's alternatives, which is
Yep.
which is a good thing, right? Um,
Yep.
so
And frankly, and demand in general, you know, the FSA has been trying to get a handle on this for a year, and I think we got a decent start. Trying to understand, is our industry growing or shrinking? Uh, Special hazards. And I think when it comes to the clean Asian aspect of special hazards, I think you'd have to say it's been, at best, it's been flat for the past 5 years, 7 years.
yeah, I would say because a lot of clean Asian is super specific. It's been around for a while, so there's no crazy industry that's really pushing it forward, and
Yep.
at
Yep.
least in the U.S. So
Yeah. But another thing too, that this law only applies to the United States. You can ship HFCs outside the U.S. And it will not impact your allocation. So I think many of these companies have got significant overseas businesses, so that isn't impacted by by this legislation.
interesting. That's interesting because I know, like, isn't it traditionally the Middle East is a big proponent
Yeah,
of clean agent,
yeah, they're big. That. Yeah.
push more to Novak though overall, I believe, wasn't it? Don't they push more to Novak?
I think um, I think it's a price market over there.
Okay,
I think that I think if you're selling 227 in the Middle East, you probably have more uh, leeway price wise uh, to reduce price than you would selling Novak. We don't do much business over there, so I'm guessing a little bit at that. Um, but yeah, it does not affect. So if you're a Janus or Kitty or Fight, you continue to ship to overseas customers and not have to eat into your allocation.
interesting. But you can't ship it here. You can't ship it
You can
nationally.
you no you well, if you can import you well, yes, in order to manufacture it or import it, you need an allocation. So if you've produced 50,000 pounds, it's eaten into your allocation. But if you take that 50,000 pounds and ship it to Saudi Arabia, you get a credit back.
Gotcha.
So net, it
Yeah,
doesn't eat into your allocation.
gotcha. All right, so it's an allocation thing. But some of those manufacturers of those agents might start weaning back on it.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to
Yeah,
watch. I don't know. They Again, if you accept the hospice theory and that FM 225 are basically in hospice right now, just waiting for the patient to die. If you run a manufacturing company, I just don't know how you depend on that. I don't know how you don't start making plans for life, without FM 200.
yeah. No, that's interesting. Um, just a random question that popped into my mind. You probably know this because you were on the extinguisher side. So, is there the only clean agent extinguishers I've seen out there are HFC ones. Is there
There's
a
Halotron.
Novak one?
Yeah, well, Halotron has got its own issues. There's you're talking about portable streaming, right?
Yeah, yeah. I thought is a Halotron not an HFC?
Halotron is partly an HCFC,
Oh,
and it's controlled. So actually, it was controlled before the HFCs were controlled. It was a class two ozone depleter, um, and there are controls over production on the ingredients that go into Halotron. Um,
gotcha.
the EPA came out with regulations. I I listened to them explain how the regulations on the ingredients for Halotron were going to act. They allowed for a servicing tail. People were concerned that there's not going to be enough Halotron to service the units that were out there.
Right.
So the EPA approved a certain quantity for a servicing tail. That is, you can produce this stuff in order to service things.
Correct.
But if you're manufacturing new ones, new halotron extinguisher, and you still can,
Right.
you could only use recycled halotron.
Interesting.
You follow me?
Yeah.
So they're trying to explain this and explain that the distributor, they're going to have to carry two different kinds of halotron, recycled and non-recycled, and the
Wow.
labeling was an issue. And as I was listening to this, I said, so the way I summed it up is that the old stuff, the recycled stuff, has to be used for the new stuff, the new equipment. And the new stuff, the new halotron, can only be used on the old stuff. That's how it goes.
That's funny.
And they said they tried to turn that into some sort of a marketing thing, but they couldn't quite get it. But anyway, but
Wow.
but 236, by the way, speaking of clean streaming agents, 236 is more potent than 227 and 125 when it comes to global warming capacity. It's really, yeah, I forget what the number is. It's 10,000 something or other, but it's very, very potent. I just don't see 236 or Clean Guard being an important part of the industry, over
Yeah.
the next
Yeah.
couple of
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
I
You
don't think it
occasionally
sold
see
many of
it.
them anyway. I don't think it was that big of a marketplace. I think when Halon 1211 went away, I think that lost its pizzazz.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. No, I think I've seen some Amerex. Amerex has come out with some recent halotron extinguishing,
Well,
portables and stuff like that.
the there's a new agent, a new streaming agent that's predominantly being used in aviation called BTP.
Okay.
Don't ask me for the long chemical name, but it's been around for a long time. BTP. It's a small ozone depleter and somewhat of a global warmer, but aviation, after 10 years of looking, could find nothing to replace 1211. Nothing. They tried
Yeah.
36, they tried Halotron, and nothing was going to satisfy the mainframe manufacturers
Right.
that didn't fit in that same size bottle in that same size bracket with that same weight as the 1211 was. Now,
Right.
BTP is not the same, but BTP came the closest. And at the end, they go, okay, we'll use BTP. And so
Right.
they started I think Amex was the first one. Amex is manufacturing them right now, and I think they're supplying. I think all new planes and
Yep.
even retrofits are getting 1211s coming off, and BTP portables are going on.
Interesting. Okay. All
Yeah,
right. Yeah, I've seen a lot of it lately, and we work a lot with Amerex
yeah,
on our platform and have a nice partnership with them. So I see a lot of their stuff
yeah,
probably in my feed.
yeah. Right, right, right.
Um, this might be I want to. It, it's been great talking about the AIM Act and things like that. I wanted to, but um, obviously AIM Act. I think that'll settle out. I don't think there's going to be too much issue with it because it's been around for a while. There are alternatives and people are informed, which is great. I think that's how some of
Yep.
fire protection progresses is create solutions if we have time, right? The whole foam thing, that's a whole different issue. That'll get worked out, but it's obviously it's quite a shorter timetable. Um,
The foam issue is going to be around much longer.
yeah, that'll be a lot longer. And there's no alternative. So that's the big thing that's gonna
Mm.
kind of keep it going. And right now it's state to state. And again, that's gonna be I've had slightly a decent podcast on that one time. I'm going to do another one because it's coming up. I get questions more and more about it. Just hey, what do I do? Do I inspect these foam systems or not? Do I just turn it away because there's
Yeah.
liability there? So
Have you talked to Tom Cortina? Tom Cortina is the guy. Tom Cortina
yeah, I'm
runs it.
I'm going to
Yeah.
try to get Tom on. I have a message into him. I'll try to reach out at some point, but
Yep.
that'd be a good resource. Um, I'm trying to get so lithium battery ion fires, right? I've seen some, and I don't know if they're fake or not. I don't know what to believe when I look online these days. But
I've seen them too.
so I've seen some lithium, some battery fires utilizing. I don't know if it's Halon or if it's Novak or it's FM200. Have you had any experience? I mean, what do the clean agents do to ion battery? Do you know?
Drew, only what I read. You know, we've heard about the explosion in Phoenix that
Yep.
caused quite a bit of damage. Um, we've heard about the cell phones on airplanes,
Right.
catching fire. I've seen the videos of a cell phone or a battery being dropped into a liquid, and
That's
it
the ones
and it
I've seen. I've
yeah,
seen.
and
Yeah.
it put it. I and there's an NFPA committee right now set up to look at just that.
Yeah.
Um, I don't I don't I don't think anything that's out there right now is an answer. I don't
Yeah.
I don't think certainly not 1211 or 1301. I don't think any of the HFCs were ever going to be an answer. I know I've heard of you know large battery backup trucks being designed with Novec fluid in it
Interesting
for suppression. Um, but I don't think there's a real
solution. Yeah.
satisfactory answer to
Yeah.
to that uh, to that question. What do we do with lithium-ion batteries? I mean, they're pretty nasty fires. If you've seen those things
Oh yeah.
catch fire,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a it's a tough thing to put out or impossible
I
thing to put
know,
out.
a lot of firefighters. I talk to them, they're volunteer or whatever, and they're having to go through training on some of the different vehicles on the roads. And what do? You kind of just let it burn, right? Get
Yeah,
everybody out
yeah,
and
yeah.
you know,
Yeah. You just get everybody out and let the thing burn. Yeah. Well, that's
yeah,
and you're right. I mean, I've seen some of those videos too of an EV, on the road catching fire, and that's now. What do you do when 10 or 15% of all the cars on the road are
I
EVs?
know.
You
Yeah.
know, what does that do for?
That'll probably be in the next 10 years, I would think.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it'll
I'm
taking
yeah.
off.
Based on what I see around my neighborhood here, it's the number of Teslas that are on the road are increasing every single year.
Yeah, I'm actually looking potentially. I don't know. I don't know if I'll get one or not, but I'm always worried about the batteries. I don't, the sustainability of them, and then obviously I think the safety's fine. It's just, you know,
I'm okay
it's an
with
issue.
horsepower. I'm okay with my
Yeah,
internal combustion engine for now. I mean, I would. By the way, they're some of the fastest cars. They're some of the quickest cars, in the world right now. The high end Teslas are
yeah,
monsters at the 0 to 60 or 0 to 100.
yeah. It
Absolutely
doesn't it
monsters.
crushes the Maseratis and
Everything.
Lamborghinis, doesn't it?
Yeah, everything. But you know, where do I plug it in, and what do I do if I'm halfway to Atlantic City and I'm running low? What do I do?
I think
I
that'll be solved quicker. I think that'll be solved pretty quick. And yeah, there's an issue there, but
yeah.
I think it'll continues to move that way. The market's like, um, it'll
It's a huge market. Yeah, yeah, it's huge. And and the other issue too, and I don't know, it's not what we were going to talk about, but the other issue is the overall environmental impact of these green energy, whether they're windmills
right,
or electric vehicles, you know, you know that lithium has got to come from somewhere, and you got to
right.
do some awfully dirty mining to get that lithium, and the disposal of it. What do we do with an EV that's come to the end of its life? Well, listen, maybe by then there'll be a whole industry dedicated to disposing properly of EVs,
Yeah, maybe there'll
recycling
be a,
EVs.
a recycling
I mean,
company that
recycling.
takes
Yeah,
all the EVs and uses it for
right. Yeah, just.
something.
I had somebody tell me once that um, he, at a point in time, was in the battery business, the car battery business, and he said we only made money on taking the old battery back. We made no money on selling new batteries. We made our money on the recycling of the old
Taking
battery.
it back.
I think that tells you
Interesting.
something. Yeah.
It's probably what, AutoZone and all them do too. They make
Yeah.
money on the ones you return,
Yeah.
and
Exactly. Yeah.
and
Exactly.
you're paying them to get rid of it, and they're
Right.
making money on it.
Right. Right. Right.
Oh, that's
Exactly.
funny.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting.
Well,
It's gonna be an interesting next 5 or 10 years. That's
yeah, um, I'd love to talk again, maybe have you on when I'm down when we're down in Bonita Springs at the FSSA event
yeah.
here in February.
Yeah.
I'll be
Oh, for
doing
sure.
something live, hopefully there. But getting to that, I try to do a quick response round with every guest that I have on.
Sure.
So you have no idea what the questions are coming, and I'd love to get your feedback on. So, uh, with us talking cars, uh, I've heard you're a big car nut. What do you like? Shelby Cobra from
I,
late '60s or a Corvette from the late '60s?
I'm a Corvette guy. I'm a Corvette guy. In my garage is a 2003 50th anniversary edition Corvette. It's got 31,000 pampered miles on it. The minute the weather here in Jersey starts to turn, I cover it, and it doesn't. I don't uncover it until the weather turns nice. I'm a Corvette guy.
Uh,
The Cobra's, Shelby Cobra is a close second.
that's funny. Yeah, my uncle is I don't know if this is a podcast or not, but he had I forgot, he had a '69 Corvette back in the day, in the '70s. He's I forgot, but
C3s, yeah,
but he got a kit car and built it himself. He got a '68 Shelby Cobra that he did.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
the funny part, I talked to him at the holidays, and he's all about Teslas now. He has,
Really,
he's like, that's I'm done with internal combustion engines, which is crazy because he's been a car nut forever,
yeah.
and he's just obsessed with Teslas, and
I've
kind
got
of
two
funny.
close friends, both of them bigger car nuts than me. Uh, both of them grew up in the horsepower era. One of them says, "I will never drive an EV in my life." The other one says, "I want one now." So I find it striking. Yeah.
That's great. Um, what is the craziest installation you've ever heard of a suppression system? Use or where it was?
Oh,
The oddest one, or you know, that nobody
well,
would ever think of.
we've had to decommission 1301 systems that were in an elevated room on top of a building with only um, uh, the narrowest of staircases to get you up to that elevated building. That was
Right.
that was kind of crazy. We've seen 20,000 pound Fike systems on the 12th floor of a building that was about to be demolished.
Oh
And,
gosh.
and thank God the freight elevator wasn't that far. Um, yeah, well, 1301 system were put everywhere, just everywhere. But those are probably the two wildest ones.
That's funny. I'm doing, we're doing a little promo this week because it's holiday season on the craziest efficiencies that you've ever seen on servicing a system. So I'm very intrigued at what comes back from the field. And we're giving a prize away, so
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
hopefully,
one of the, and this is related or not, but um, you know, we we ran this in one of our newsletters about how somebody not in the U.S. but overseas, they were called into service a system, a Novec system, pulled the tank out, brought it to the facility, and found it filled with sand.
wow,
Sand.
wow,
So
interesting.
again, I don't know where it was. We ran that and immediately got a phone call from 3M. Where did you hear about this? Where did you hear about this? Tell us where it is. Here it is. That's all we know.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
Um,
that's funny.
Yeah, but by the way, as we move into the latter years of 1301 and 227, the contamination is an issue. You know,
Oh,
contam- contamination of the of gas that's out there right now that's been recycled. It's an issue. You know, the NFPA revised its 2001 uh, uh, standard a couple of years ago and said if you're a distributor and you're filling tank A with FM 200 and you're taking that FM 200 out of tank B that you just pulled out of a facility, down the road, if you want to be in compliance, you got to sample that tank B, make sure that it complies with ASTM, and then fill the tank. So
wow.
they're beginning to understand that not everybody is careful about servicing, and not everybody worries that the gas that's in the tank complies with either ISO or ASTM standards. The contamination, I think, is going to be an
That's
issue.
crazy. It
I
is an
think
issue.
contamination could be an issue going. It's an issue right now in certain industries.
With that, another question, where there's obviously some troubles within the industry, whether it be labor or just recruiting talent or, customer buy-in with a lot of the troubles with um, just building in the economy and all that. What do you see over the next 5 years as the greatest challenge to the fire protection industry as a whole?
You hit on one. I think labor. I mean, I used to uh, at board meetings more than once survey and go, okay, scale of 1 to 10, how big is how big of a problem is labor? One being the worst and 10 being it's no problem at all. And you see hands go up immediately. One, it's the single biggest issue, and that was pre-COVID.
Yeah,
Now
yeah,
it's only gotten worse. Um,
yes,
I think, and FSSA is doing this. I think we need to dig down a little bit further into the tech schools and into the programs that train would-be electricians and would-be plumbers to be,
sure,
would-be fire technicians. So, yeah, I think that's an issue. Listen. I think the lithium-ion fire is an issue. You know,
yeah,
that's going to be big, a much bigger part of the fire hazard going forward, and we still don't have a way to put it out.
no, no.
It's so
Yeah, I have some ideas to do a podcast in the first quarter of next year. Who my industry friend, Christina Francis, who is at Procter and Gamble, she now works for Tesla. Um,
really
so I'm interested to see what that they're smart people over there. So I'm sure they've
somebody at
got
Tesla must be working on this somewhere, right?
yeah they've got to. I mean, because they've got they're the biggest car company in the world, right? They've
Yeah.
got enough money to work on it, and I think if they solve it, it's another issue that they can put
You
under
know what I
their
think
hands.
to me is an equally interesting question, and that is if you look at all of our manufacturers today, the equipment manufacturers, they should be the ones working on this. I wonder if they are.
I know, I know. I
You know, I mean, maybe they are. Maybe they are. And listen, if I were doing it, I might not be telling the world yet, but I
That's
hope
true.
they are. I hope they
That's
are.
true.
Yeah,
I hope they are too. I hope
yeah,
there's something there, and then they because they ripe opportunity because of that taking off. So
yeah, yeah. I mean, the person who figures that out is. I
yeah,
don't think you're going to be another
write their
Elon
ticket.
Musk, but you're going to make it. You're going to make a lot of money.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it's our job to kind of figure that out. I would think, but I
Yeah,
just
no,
don't.
totally.
I just don't know. Again, I'd love to see the data, but we never will. In our industry, how much money is going into R&D? Real R&D. I mean, real forward thinking. You asked the question 5 years from now. What do you think? I wonder if I wonder how much money is going into R&D in our fire suppression business. I
I
don't know.
I
I
I
wonder
think
though.
with all I think with consolidation and all the stuff pointing to numbers, it's definitely gone backwards
Yeah,
over the last 10, 15 years.
yeah,
I just remember working for some of the manufacturers, and there's some just great ideas out there. I feel like it's stalled with some of the, throwing stuff on the wall to see if it sticks. Now it's put through a whole process where, it goes through, and I'm a Six Sigma person, I'm a big process person, but it goes through the rigmarole of, you know, of what the profit's going to make day one, when the ROI is going to be, and it
Yeah.
kind of shoots down a lot of ideas. And I don't know, that's from the sprinkler side, but you know,
Well, I think on the um, suppression side, you can kind of make the same case. And and I'm not trying to badmouth some of the consolidations, but in in some of these things, some of these companies that 10 years ago or 15 years ago, they were they lived and died through their production of fire suppression equipment,
hmm
whether they be handheld portables or clean agent systems. Now, some of those same companies are a couple of line items,
yeah,
products on a much bigger mix.
sure, sure,
And the people that, and they're all good. We know who they are, and they're good
right.
people, but they're competing with all the other products that are there.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think there's some good innovation on the really, definitely on the software side and some of the tech side, which we're involved in. So
Yeah.
that'll be interesting to see how that takes off. So,
Somebody,
um,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, no, no.
We're running
One
late.
last question.
Yeah.
We're right up at the hour. I want to keep it, just to keep people engaged, and we'll definitely have you on in February. But so you're not a North Jersey guy, you're not a South Jersey guy,
Central.
you're Central.
There is a Central Jersey.
So is that it? So you're not an Eagles fan.
Oh, I'm a Giant fan.
You're a Giants
Not a
fan. So
Giant fan.
that's
Yeah.
North Jersey, right?
Yeah. It's no, we're not North Jersey. We're not South Jersey. We're Central
Central
Jersey.
Jersey.
It's contentious here. By the way, we hate being passed over. We hate being lumped in with North or lumped in with the South. But
Well, it's
we're
funny.
actually we're almost at the point where the Jersey Turnpike and the Parkway crossover.
And
That's where we are.
cross it. There's the Central Jersey. I know John Stewart and um, Stephen Colbert got into this one time about Central Jersey.
Did they?
You know?
I think
Yeah,
one of
yeah.
them is a Jersey guy. I think I forget which one.
I think I know. I think they both live in Jersey. They're both
Do
from
they?
Jersey, but
Yeah.
and somebody, John Mackey wanted me to ask you, out of all the pizzas out there, out of all the cities,
Yeah. It's
rank one, two, and three.
yeah. I've done the Jersey, Jersey, and Jersey.
Jersey, Jersey doesn't have a pizza.
Yeah, yeah, we do. Oh, we do. I could leave here and drive um, a mile in each direction and come across a dozen pizza places that are better than Mackey's Chicago Pizza.
Well, Chicago's not pizza, so
Yeah,
like.
exactly, exactly.
But what about New York? I mean, New York.
Well,
I don't. Is there
no,
a
there's great
Jersey
places. Yeah.
style pizza?
No, no, it's no,
It's
it's
New
New
York
York, New Jersey.
style.
It's all New York style. It's that chewy, dripping with mozzarella and
Yeah, yeah,
grease, and the ones you can fold up and
yeah,
shove in
yeah.
your mouth and all.
I'm in Connecticut now, so I have all the. I didn't even realize how great New Haven style pizza was, but it rivals that of New York, I think.
You know,
You know,
somebody told me, or maybe it was somebody told me that same thing about
yeah,
Connecticut pizza.
New
Never
Haven
would have thought
pizza.
that. Never would have thought
Yeah,
it. Yeah. But
weirdly enough,
Mackie and I had this conversation, this running joke, and one day, middle of the day, UPS FedEx shows up with a great big box of Chicago pizzas that were frozen. So of course I went home, we cooked them all up, brought them back here, and ate them.
See, you can do that with Chicago style pizza because it's a casserole.
Yeah,
You can't do that with New York or New Haven pizza because it's
yeah,
thin and it's actual.
yeah. I was actually in New York yesterday with my daughter came up for a play. We were in Brooklyn. I tell you, I'm so amazed at how that part of New York has changed over the last years. The down by the waterfront, underneath the Brooklyn Bridge, that
Yeah,
whole area there, it's just absolutely amazing. Packed with
yeah,
people having a good
yeah.
time.
I was there for, my wife and I were there for 11, 12 years, and we got out a year before the pandemic. And it's,
Where were you for 11? You were
we
in.
were in Greenpoint in Williamsburg.
Oh, were you really?
Yeah, which was, it was great, but it got a little too, it got a little too commercialized, I feel like. I mean, the pandemic kind of kicked it back down a little bit. I liked the roughness, to a certain extent of it. I didn't want it, so commercialized that,
Very commercialized. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Very
definitely down by
commercial.
Brooklyn Bridge and stuff like that now. But
Yeah, yeah. It'd been a while. I lived in Manhattan years ago, Upper West Side. Um, it's Manhattan's gone through a couple of tough years, and COVID didn't help.
no, it'll be back. It's
Yeah,
already kind of on the way back.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
well, John, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining the podcast today.
Yeah,
And
Drew, thank you for having me. Pleasure's all mine.
any quick plugs to let you know where we can find you, or anything about Wesco, or
Well, you can find us at ushalonbank.com. We publish a monthly newsletter. It's fairly. We're probably in close to our 20th year right now of publishing our newsletter. We try to cover as much of the news of the industry as possible. If you go onto our website, you can find a link to subscribe to the Halon Herald. We'd love you to join, and yep, that's it. Just enjoy the
great.
industry.
Well, have a good remainder of the year. Enjoy the holidays, and
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah,
see you next
thanks,
year
Drew, and same to you too, and same to yours. Hope to see you soon. If not, we'll see you at FSSA.
in February.
All right.
Totally. Thanks.